this Monday, the 16th of May. We will open this Port Authority meeting for business. There is approval of the minute meetings from April 18 and the agenda itself. Is there anything you want to add or delete from the agenda? The one thing I would
yes, add. Yes.
Wait.
You were going to say it anyway.
Yep.
The discussion.
I would like to have some discussion on both the Norgren property and County 116.
Let's do that after Vector,
Yep.
but before the closed
So
session.
before the closed session.
Can you both speak up a little bit? It's really hard to hear.
Okay, we can get closer to the mic too.
Hi, Bridget.
So there's two items we're going to add, or one item: discussion on land use and for the Northern property and city county 116 land. So with that, I would be looking for a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda as read. Thank you, Caroline. And do we have a second for that?
I'll make that.
Thank you, Brent. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Having none, the agenda and the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is a dairy update, and I will call upon the Dairy Queen.
Hello, it's me, your
It's
Dairy
getting
Queen.
to that. It's getting to that time of year.
Yeah, Dairyland is open. If anyone is interested in going there, but so we don't have a ton of updates on the dairy property currently. We are still waiting on a draft of the appraisal. I believe Andrew was going to check in and just see where they were with it. We thought last week maybe they would have something to us by so hopefully early this week. So my fingers are crossed that we get that. And then we are moving ahead with the rezoning, which will be at the Planning Commission on the 23rd, so next Monday. And we had talked at the last Port Authority meeting about that rezoning application and rezoning it based on the usage that we see moving forward, which would mean that we would keep the river buffer parcel as RA zoning. When the appraiser was here last week, we talked about what that would look like from his perspective for the appraisal process. He actually suggested that we don't do the zoning separately, and we just do the whole thing R4. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do on Monday, is suggest to the Planning Commission that they just rezone the entire thing R4, and then later on down the road, if we do want to do some rezoning differently, we can do it at that point. But this just makes the appraiser's process a little bit simpler, which is kind of my main goal right now. So if anybody has any questions or objections about that, we can discuss it, but otherwise, that's how we'll move forward.
I think maybe you just touch on the visit by the appraiser last week. It went really well.
Yeah, Chris Strakota came up. He is the official appraiser in charge of the project. He got to do a site visit. He met with city staff members, talked to a couple other developers in town. So overall, I think it was a really good visit for him, and he got some good information, some context maybe he didn't have the first time around. He also was not the one who came and did the site visit last time, so it was good to have his boots on the ground, so to say, to actually see the site. So, yeah, it was good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have there been any responses or comments on the RFP? Okay.
Nope. And we kept it open the amount of time that we said we would, and then we closed it once it was, because we had a set time limit that we were going to have it open. So it's technically not available on the website currently. So if somebody wanted to look for it, they'd have to reach out and ask us for some information.
I don't think until these construction costs get underway, I mean, just like the Shopko property over there, I mean, their costs were a lot higher than what they predicted, and I don't think anybody, it might not be necessarily the site or the price, it's just they don't want to dive into anything right now until we start getting some control over these construction costs.
It's entirely possible.
It would be good to know though what is it, you know? Like we had talked
Yeah.
some about, is it the railroad? Is it
What's
that it's not
what's the
ready?
negative?
Is it construction costs? Like, I don't know how you find
Find
that
that
out,
out.
but do you talk to some builders or contractors and
Well,
say,
didn't you say at one point that you had a couple people who had reached out about the RFP? Do you still have that information?
They didn't reach, we had just talked like in past, they didn't like submit like formal questions or anything, but it was just more related to like, if they had questions about the zoning, or they would question, there wasn't really a lot of direction for that, or design standards, those types of things.
Okay. So they wouldn't be able to give us any further input?
I mean, I can ask again, yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Might be
Just
helpful.
anecdotal from.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'd be
Yeah.
helpful.
And then we could just pace a little bit on the rail crossings. We did meet with Ottertail Valley, and in terms of additional rail crossings and moving the one, and that's gone to their regional legal part, and so it's now in railroad land.
so there's a request
We put a request
from
in
or
from
to
the
the
city or
railroads.
from the Port Authority to the railroad to move the crossing to Broadway, and
They seem receptive, right? I mean,
overall their response was positive, even at the regional corporate level. It was not a negative, so and it's good for them because the crossing has to get done up anyway, and they so and ultimately Genesee Wyoming aren't the worst. They're not like the BN. I mean, the BN are terrible to work with, but Genesee Wyoming, you can just actually see something. You can actually meet somebody in face to face. So, and then we talked a little bit about the trail and things like that, and they weren't negative.
it's one crossing, right?
No, it's actually two.
we're
so
hoping for
there'd be-
2, yeah.
Two.
There'd be kind of one on the east end and one on the west end.
Okay.
Because right now there's just the one across or off of
Because
Use.
technically Barefoot Park is not really a crossing. It's kind of akin to, I don't know if people remember, like at the bottom of Lake Alice, there used to be kind of like a walk crossing there that kind of just evolved over time.
Did you say the bottom of Lake Alice?
Well, the south end of Lake
Oh,
Alice.
okay. I thought
Yeah.
you meant like,
That took me a
I
second.
know, I
I was like, what are we talking about?
Low water?
But that's because you dive in there and you go through that duct.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gross.
So it's those aspects of it are moving.
Yeah, it would be good to know if that is a barrier or a question on
Yeah.
potential contractors' minds or
What the
cost.
what the
like
issues are.
Brent said.
Yeah, we can look into that and just send some feelers out to maybe people who had asked not official questions but had expressed some interest. So I don't have any of that info, but if we can work together on that. Okay.
And then will we open that up again at some
Yeah,
point?
I think
Yeah, we need to.
if we can get through this piece and we get through the zoning, then we can be very specific about this is kind of what the property is, and especially if we can get some feedback from the rail, because I'm sure at this point in time you can't really access it very well. So I mean that would be a impediment for somebody to buy it.
Right. Thank you.
So whilst you're up there, would you like to talk about Vector Windows?
Yes, so we did receive formal word that Vector Windows is withdrawing their purchase agreement on the Port Authority land by Progress Drive. So unfortunately, those 5 acres, or those 5 parcels that we thought that Vector was going to be using, it is not, those are not going to be used by them at this time. So just kind of like a little bit of background, they are pushing back their building process probably about 3 to 5 years, just based on cost and how they're functioning currently. And so they are making some different choices currently to be able to continue operating and expanding, but they are still interested in continuing the conversation within the next few years. So there is still port land that could be available for them if we decide to go down that road with them. But for now, we'll just let them do what they need to do to expand in a way that they feel is best for them. So we are actively seeking new purchasers for the Progress Drive land. And I don't know, Bill, if you want to make any comments about the taxes?
So we looked at, there may be a tax deferral that will be coming up this year, that we'd have to start paying property taxes on that. And then Rolf and I'll talk with him about the special assessments, because we have deferred them as the city. And the thought was that they would be becoming active this year, but when I pulled the resolutions from back then, they've been deferred for 15 years. We may not have to activate them, but let's say we sell them 3 years from now, then they'll have to be paid off over a shorter period of time, over 12 years instead of 15. So Rolf and I will get together and look at that resolution and kind of decipher how that works, so.
So one positive of it is that we do now have a Phase 1 environmental that was done, and we do have geotechnical information that we can pass on to anybody else who might be interested in that property.
Way to go, Natalia.
Well, no, I just have a question.
Oh, yeah. I thought you'd got somebody interested in the property. It's like,
Well, so my question is, on the tax bill, is that applicable to all 5 parcels or 1 or 2 of them? Are there any specific parcels where that we could maybe guide someone who might be interested into taking those parcels?
I think it's all 5 of them are what was deferred, both taxes and special assessments. So when we figure that out, let's talk too, so you know exactly where we're at with that too. But I think it was the same on all the parcels, so,
I think we submitted them all just as like a blanket
yeah.
thing to the county saying the uses, they're not being used, let's defer for a while. So.
do you have anything else? Right, well, the next topic was talking a little bit about the Norgren and industrial land. Maybe we can start with the Norgren property. And obviously, historically in the past, we've looked at, the city bought that piece of property, or the Port Authority bought that property, cleaned it up. We've done quite a bit of plat work on portions of that land. And likewise, we're in a desperate situation regarding housing. And I was talking to Clara and about kind of like what can we do, and we had thoughts about whether we could you drive down the interstate and you see kind of like billboards that say land for $1 a square foot. What would be wrong with us looking at trying to sell the first 10 of those lots to get something moving for kind of a nominal figure, like $1 a square foot or $10 a square foot, or something that we're never, in my opinion, we're never going to really truly get a return on our money in terms of value. If we've got $1 million in it, we're not going to get $1 million back. But if we could sell the lots and get houses built on it, then over time, the purpose of kind of owning the land and actually turning it into something more than rented farmland would obviously be there. And it's something for, not necessarily, not looking for any decisions this evening or anything like that, but more to get, the little grey blood cells working as to other ways that we could do it. We sell the first 10 lots for $1. We sell the next 10 lots for, $5,000. We sell the next 10 lots for $10,000. So that, we can actually stimulate somebody to buy the property and start actually some construction and development out there. Obviously, we'd have to look at obviously assessments in terms of roads and sewer and things like that.
You started reading my mind, didn't you?
But
But there's a
if you don't
return
have,
on investment.
but if you don't, And obviously there could be some criteria that, we're not going to sell one person 10 lots for $10, There's got to be some qualification to buy it and build it. If you don't build it within a set period of time, you don't own it.
Yeah. That's what I was worried about, just, I would sell them individually, just for the fear fact of somebody come in and sitting on them and then,
Yeah, but they go nowhere. Yeah.
yeah.
That'd be the purpose of a development agreement.
Yeah.
Is you could sell one or more, and the development agreement would spell out the fact that development had to occur within this timeframe, or it reverts back.
But it was basically something to, if other people got ideas, I think we need to explore them, and we need to try to get something to happen out there.
Yeah, I mean, how many properties have we sold at a loss, but in the long run, when you figure the tax revenue coming in and everything else, we're gonna end up,
Yeah.
coming out ahead, because right now we're getting nothing.
Yeah. And I think, if we go more down the road of individual lots as opposed to, apartment buildings, we don't, in my opinion, we don't need any more apartment buildings. Every apartment building you seem to drive by has kind of signs that say, lease is available or rent.
My wife's, they got, as soon as they're open, they're rented.
Yeah.
There's a very low vacancy rate.
Yeah.
Or maybe
It's like 2 point.
Rebecca had a question for you.
Well, just a comment. I think it's wonderful that we're forward thinking. I think we need to do something.
Yeah.
I think there's a need. But I think, working with finance and legal, need to figure out the best way
Yeah.
to move this forward.
But if,
And a first step maybe is, and Caroline and I had a brief conversation about this, but I did reach out to the engineering department just to see what it would look like to put together an infrastructure plan for that site. I haven't gotten any information back yet, but I am hoping to get that soon. I was hoping I could bring something forward tonight to say, hey, let's, enter into a contract to get this put together, but we're not quite there yet, so.
but I think we can work on that, and in the meantime, people can kind of regurgitate it. And if there's, as you say, if there's pluses and kind of minuses on how we can develop a contract that sells a house or sells a lot to somebody.
Build a house.
Yeah. The goal would be to build a house, and and if we can look at it, and if there are more desirable lots over other lots, then maybe we don't have to sell those for $1. But but on the flip side, the goal is to get development.
How much of it is platted off currently?
It's probably, and I don't know if I have a map available to pull up, but if you think about the property that's up there when you're coming off of 111 and going up toward the bike park, there's probably somewhere between, I think it's probably around 15 acres that's platted currently, and then there are another 20 acres, 26 acres, and 17 acres, I think, above that are not platted currently.
Do you remember?
I would, go ahead.
Do you remember about how many lots were platted? Like, are we talking?
Lots. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots, quite a
There's a
few.
lot of lots.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot. A lot of lots.
Lots and lots
20?
of lots.
Oh, more than 20.
Not 100, but
There's quite a
More
few.
than 20, less than 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say 50.
Okay.
Say
50, okay.
Okay.
Just so.
About 50.
Yeah.
If we-
and there were a variety of
I can
That's
maybe
what-
size.
Okay.
That's what I remembered, yeah.
There was kind of like, for the quote townhome to the kind of the executive
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
that, Brent would be living in. So,
There's a lot of advantages.
Hey, if it ain't a
to that site.
repossession, I ain't living in it. All my houses have been foreclosures.
so
Yeah, so that was gonna be my next question, is to try to hit some, some different price levels, but I don't know.
to my mind, if we could get sort of it to be something different than twin homes, and,
Yeah.
and not necessarily executive homes, but sort
Yeah.
of more affordable kind of housing.
Yeah,
I think
that's kind of where I'm.
Good, decent house.
Building
if we could
costs.
sort of aim for that almost $250,000 build as opposed to kind of the
Well, underneath-
75.
Underneath the current construction costs, you wouldn't get much. 250.
But if they get the
I
lot
think
for
that's just
a,
but I mean, houses in England are like, you know, people live in a lot smaller houses and a lot. You know, I mean, we have the luxury of space here. You know that. You know, 2 up, 2 down.
Damn.
Don't click, just so.
So doesn't it? You can just search that. No, you can just
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost shoot single-family homes in that
Yeah.
area.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what's out there. Well, there's some twin homes right by that cemetery, but
But I mean, if they could go through there and pick out the ones that are maybe less desirable and then start with those on the, you know, pretty much buy it for $1 and.
So it's right here. This was platted and then these are what remain unplatted.
Maybe there is only 20. Yeah, I think
I thought there was more than that.
I did. You'll have to.
Yeah, but if you could get all them sold off and then once the developers see that, then the rest of it becomes a little bit more appealing.
it's a nice part of town.
Yeah, I mean, because the price we got offered for it for actual land, I mean, we're still losing money on it.
So could we put together some kind of a work group to work on this in the next couple of months? I mean, what makes
Yeah.
sense timeline-wise? Because I know that I hear this all the time. You know, there's a housing shortage, and what are we doing about it? And
That's where, you know, if there was kind of any kind of, you know, COVID type infrastructure grant aid, you know, I mean, if we put it into something like that, that would be a far better use of it. But I think, yes, you know, as you say, obviously to keep, if we've got a consensus that it's a good idea, then I think, as you say, some sort of working group of kind of, say, 2 or 3 people to help move this forward would be a good idea. So with that, I will turn it over to Clara to seek anybody that wants to help.
Who would like to? My main goal is just to figure out the infrastructure piece of it so that we know what we're getting ourselves into. So
So do
I
we
will
want a
keep pushing on
motion?
that.
From us to direct city staff to work on that?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to make that, Bridget?
I would.
Like,
I'll second.
Bridget is making a motion and Caroline is seconding it. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, motion is approved. So, basically, I mean, anybody that kind of wants to touch base with Clara, and then we can do that. Then, my next thought was, I do have a hand.
He's got maps.
I'll push you 3 this way.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
One for Bill, and then I got 3 other ones. Oh, I need 1, but sorry, Bill. I know what it is. I did it. Oh no, I can. The other piece that I was kind of interested in is that, you know, we keep bringing up and we talk about the land on the industrial estate, and you know, we talked about there's something like a $2 million construction cost to put a road in that would service one probably industrial lot. You know, and the golf club, the
airport?
Speedway is interested in a lot of that land, and most of that land is pretty useless from an industrial development point of view because it's got so many wetlands and sloughs in it. Well, there's, you know, from 116, obviously the ethanol plant sits
on the top. There's basically three basic parcels of land on there. The middle one got sold last year to a developer, well, to an investor, should I say, rather than a developer. And then the furthest north one has also got sold to an investor, and the lower one is owned by a lady that lives in California that collectively we've had numerous conversations with over the course of time. And at this point in time, she may or may not be in more of a reasonable position to sit and actually talk about selling the land. And the old EIC looked at that piece of land, and we did some preliminary drawings laying out some options on that. And from an industrial perspective, it makes more sense because the traffic doesn't have to go into town. So all the trucks are obviously on that side of the interstate. It's an easy on and off, subject to, of course, the road construction that's going to take place, to get to those industrial sites. For example, we have like 120 semis a day coming to the plant, and that road was obviously built and constructed to carry that sort of traffic. There's also natural gas that got brought up 116 to the plant, so there's access to natural gas off there. Where the livestock barn is, there's a substation there for natural gas, and that got rerouted, a new pipe coming from the north of Fergus, I think 2 years ago now. So all of the infrastructure for natural gas is in very good condition over there. There's a good aquifer there for anybody that wants to drill a well and use water that runs kind of actually literally through that area of 116. And from a utility perspective, there's also Lake Region has a substation, but there's a Great River Energy main line that you tap off that actually runs kind of more or less alongside the interstate. So there is a lot of physical infrastructure that's in that area that would not be too difficult to tap into. Obviously, we would have to look at how do we fund it, of course, which is always a question on everybody's mind. But to my mind, it would make more sense to look at that than spending a whole lot of dollars on in-town. We'll end up with another lot like we own, that Vector Windows was looking at, which was, taking 5 lots, trying to make it into something meaningful. And even then, those lots have got a significant drop-off, where this is basically, more or less flat land. So it's, again, something to think about and something to kind of, sort of like, gurgitate and see what questions we come up with.
Do we know what those other lots sold for?
I mean, we can look it up.
Yeah, because if the spot we're talking about before, to bringing in $2 million to bring in a road, if a lot of that is not useful,
Yeah.
what is that lot worth versus what we would be looking at purchasing? So, yeah, I just, there's an offset. If that's really not a usable lot, do we have people interested in that lot who'd be willing to purchase that lot, which that funding could be used to purchase the other part?
Yeah.
Or reimburse it once we have purchased it?
Yeah. Obviously these lots don't have access to railroad, which is the one downside. Where obviously that little bit on the industrial park does have, but even then, it's a short spur, and like for somebody like us, it's not big enough. Out of the 116 acres that we have, we use about 45 of them. So once you start wanting to lay rail track down, you take up a lot of land, you know, especially, you know, plus rail track's expensive. So that was another thing to think about. And we can look at, I mean, if people have kind of a stimulus about it, I'll do some more digging and find out what price the land sold for. The other one's only just sold, so I don't know whether it'll be listed on the, whether it's listed on the county website yet.
Yeah, I mean, because this is all pretty much just flat, which means it's a lot more usable
Yep.
versus what we currently have.
Yep. And that's where I see this is actually, and with what MnDOT are looking at in terms of the reconfiguration of the Interstate 210 junction, that actually will make it that much easier. I mean, we get advantageous truck rates. Like, there's a lot of trucks come from basically Canada to St. Paul, and they carry fertilizer and they carry wheat, and they will give a discount to pick up from our plant to go back with a load to Canada because we are so easy on and off the interstate. You know, like a distiller's truck will be at the plant for say 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most to come in, get loaded, and be back on the road. So for a trucker, that's worth a lot. And a lot of them will even actually park and stay overnight. You know, we can take business away from Morris and sell for more per ton because they don't want to drive all the way across to Morris and then back again to the interstate. So, you know, this site, we don't exploit Fergus enough from its actual trunk where it sits. So it's a worthy thing.
Do we have comments from an economic development perspective?
I'm very pleased that you're talking about this. I think that there's a lot of opportunity right now. So, I mean, if you are interested in pursuing this, the timing is quite relevant because this listing went live in January and there have been no less than 10 pretty serious inquiries from a commercial and industrial standpoint on that property right now. So if you were to purchase it, I don't know that you necessarily have to hold it for that long. And there's a mix too, some retail. So it may not even be that you would necessarily need to purchase the entire 95 acres. I mean, it could be, you know, the northern half, the western half portion of that. But the owner is committed enough to have listed with an agent. They've already worked on, you know, some pricing. So I think right now it's good timing to consider that, considering the other potential for development that's in that area. And the accessibility, that is the one thing that I hear from interested parties is the accessibility to the interstate and that visibility that it offers as well. They don't have to drive all the way through town to get to an industrial site. So if you wanted, you know, some, I mean, I couldn't give you specifics on the inquiries, but I could give you numbers. I could give you some roundabout, you know, industry estimates if that would be, you know, beneficial to the conversation. It could be a low-level economic impact analysis with just general industries, just to show you what that could look like.
So maybe between now and the next Port Authority meeting, Natalia and I can get together and come up with something more to share.
So I just want to summarize so I understand what our goal is. So is that property for sale?
Yep.
Yeah.
So all three of these chunks?
No.
No, you're just talking about the south one?
Yeah, just the south one. The two.
The Walmart.
The middle one is being sold to an investor group that then actually turned out to be a gentleman in Moorhead.
Okay, so the south one is for sale.
The south one is for sale.
And the port would consider purchasing it for the purpose of selling for development.
For industrial development.
It's a parcel outline there, 96.
It's 95.
So the middle portion that's got Buy More in it, that's already been sold.
Yeah.
So I guess thinking out loud, I mean, if if the private market is already showing a lot of interest, is there maybe another way that the port, I mean, rather
Can
than
help.
That's kind of my question.
purchasing to then resell, like, is there some other way the port can be a partner in helping to move development along?
Right, that's kind of the question, like what's the port's
I don't know what that
role
would
if
look like.
there are already wheels in motion of buying and selling and developing?
It would be more maybe if somebody doesn't want it all, because I'm sure, that's, and maybe the port buys the piece that doesn't sell.
Yeah, okay.
If you know what I mean, if there's private developer that's interested in, say, a third of it.
And that's kind of the sticking point, because 95 acres, that's quite a bit for many. Most people, commercial wise, they're looking at maybe 20, maybe 30 acres. So, again, you wouldn't necessarily have to look at all 95 acres, but parceling that out. And developing the infrastructure. That would make it more attractive, because again, that's another sticking point. Yes, they love the location, but currently, there is an infrastructure that supports it.
So I'm not against any of this, but I have to ask the question. We didn't get any RFQs on the dairy, and we've got some bills to start paying there, right?
Yep.
And we're talking about the Norgren property too, and trying to, potentially sell some lots for way less than what we are anticipating. So how do we?
And that's something we'd have to look into. I haven't done any research
Right.
on how we pay for it.
Right.
And it's more about, if there's a plan we can come up with, then I'd like to try to move a conversation at least so that we know what would entail and what it would entail, and then whether or not we can get it done. Rebecca?
Well, and Anthony, you kicked this off with that, talking about the speedway, the racetrack, and that property there. Was there some kind of trade-off you were
technically,
thinking?
the Speedway always keeps intimating they want to buy that land.
I wondered if that's where you're going
And
with
so,
this.
obviously, that would be a source of some revenue, but not enough.
Yeah.
So that's, I just look at that piece of land and it's like, nobody's ever going to do anything with it, from an industrial perspective.
So, thank you for the clarity.
Yep.
I wondered if that's where
Yep.
you're going with that.
But why do you say that?
Just because it's so awkward. It costs.
Oh, you mean the Speedway one?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
thought you meant.
sorry.
I was like, wait
Okay.
a second.
No.
I thought this was prime land.
Yeah.
I think what's encouraging to me is that we're demonstrating that we can be flexible with what we've been given, because this port inherited that land that was purchased for industrial growth over by what is now the racetrack. We have made moves to try to get it sold. It hasn't been a ton of interest. It is an awkward piece of land.
And-
So this is just a shift in perspective that I think is healthy.
And it might be that we have to look at something like Western Industries again, that type of structure. That's not,
But does that awkward piece of land does it actually serve another purpose? Is there another use for that land that would be appealing for that kind of?
I think, obviously to my mind, like the racetrack would obviously likes it,
Yeah, but do they like all of it?
but I think that would be the thing, that you would probably encourage them to go maybe all or nothing. Because that little bit at the bottom is such a, owning, if you buy those kind of fields, that land, to mitigate the wetlands is extremely difficult. I don't think anybody was going to take them on board. It's easier to start with kind of a piece of somewhat flat land that you can deal with.
So do we need a motion to move this forward?
I
Why are we?
Yeah, I mean,
To do the,
I'm wondering, do we tie this conversation in with our strategic planning and our comprehensive planning because we do still have, there was gonna be a road connection going across that land that we probably still need to figure out, like, is that a connection that we need? And maybe that's part of a larger conversation.
and maybe we have to find out how serious the Speedway group are. You know, I mean, you know, they're leasing it again, but I mean, in fairness, we've been the ones that have probably drug our feet as much as anything on trying to sell it, because we wanted to hold it for kind of a magical industrial use.
just for the record, I'm not suggesting that we buy this land
No,
right now. I'm just suggesting that we keep this on the table.
yeah, and that's kind of, and I think that's where, as you say, whether we need a motion, I'll dig out some values and then hopefully then at the next Port Authority meeting we can share those.
I just know we still have more business and we're running out of time.
Okay.
Kicking people off.
Yeah, as we're coming in, we're gonna kick them out.
So that's kind of where we're at. So maybe then the final piece is to close the meeting to discuss some threatened litigation